we also have Advocate Galega, the Deputy Public Protector. We have Ms. Mamabulu, the Senior Manager in my office, but also now Acting Chief of Staff. And we have the Acting CFO of Public Protector South Africa. And I think we will have Mr. Debele, who is also the corporate services. Chairperson, I hope you've received the presentation, and I must apologize for the late transmission of the presentation, but we will take you through the presentation, and I'll hand over to Ms. Lucibane. I hope she has joined us. Letabo, I don't see her to make the presentation, and then we will engage with the honorable members on the follow-up questions.
Thank you, PP. Good afternoon, Chairperson and honorable members. I will request Ms. Mamabolo to share the presentation in the meeting so we can proceed.
Noted, Ace, I am sharing.
Chairperson. 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 Chair. Have we lost the chairperson before we start?
Honorable members, I think we have connectivity problems. Yes, we have connectivity problems. People are cutting. I'm not sure whether you can hear me.
I can hear you, Chair.
Okay. Honorable Janche.
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much. I just want, before the presentation is made, to connect with what the Public Protector is saying. Maybe to indicate to the Public Protector Chair that we received the document 2 a.m. this morning for a meeting to be had now. We had received a structure 7 days ago or last week. I hear the Public Protector is forwarding an apology, but I have a difficulty, Chair, that we only, because I think the apology is not explaining what the difficulty was with the Public Protector's office for us to receive document. Okay. Can you hear me?
Honorable Janchi.
Can you hear me?
I can't hear you. Honorable Janchi.
Chair.
We can't hear you. You are cutting. We can't hear you at all.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
From our side, we can hear Chairperson. Honorable Janchi, we can hear you.
Hello?
Chair.
Honorable.
Can you hear me?
Chair.
Sorry, Honorable Ngola. Can Honorable Janchi repeat? I just could not hear him at all. Please, Honorable Janchi.
No, maybe before that, Chair. I think there is generally a problem on your side because we could hear Honorable Janchi very well. We are hearing you with some cutting. We heard the PP very well. So I hear even other members can hear Honorable Janchi very well, just like I did. Maybe Chair should equally talk with the ICT department to check what may be the problem.
Okay. I have changed to another device. Maybe it will assist. I could not hear the gist of what Comrade Janchi was saying. And maybe using the new device, I'll be able to hear Honorable Janji. Honorable
I'm
Janji?
happy to repeat.
Okay, you can repeat, Honorable Janji.
No, thank you very much, Chair. Chairperson, I was making a point that just before the presentation is made by the PP team, I wanted to connect with the PP's apology about the late submission of the narrative presentation or document. And the point I was making is that I have a difficulty that we have received the document 2 a.m. this morning from the committee section. I don't know what time the PP's office sent that document to the National Assembly for our perusal and study. And we've received a structure last week, the organogram itself, not accompanied by any narrative. So the difficulty I have is that I would have loved the public protector to explain that apology as to perhaps what was the difficulty in the office of the public protector to have sent one section of what we must deal with, which is the structure, and not accompanied by the narrative. Is the public protector saying that they only finished the narrative yesterday, having sent us the structure last week, or is the problem with us in a committee section? I would pose this issue. I'm very allergic to issues of late submissions because our oversight role, we must apply our mind on anything that comes in front of us in order to make good decisions. And when you receive a document 2 a.m. in the morning, have gone through it. It is never an unacceptable practice. And you either are sending a message that does not respect who you're sending this document to, or you have a problem on your side. Either of the two has to be explained. I thank you, Chair. No, thank you very much.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, may I say something? It's Glynis.
A point.
Thank you. I support Mr. Janki's proposal. I also am a little perturbed at the timing of this report.
No, thank you very much, honourable members.
I would have loved
PP,
the public protector to explain.
Can you explain, because I also received the document at 2:15 this morning, and when I checked with the Secretariat, they received the document after 11 yesterday. That can't be acceptable.
In the office of the public protector.
Chairperson and honourable members, I will have to. Hello, I'll have to ask
what we must deal with, which is the structure, and not
the
accompanied
CEO as to why did we submit the document or the structure first and then the presentation later, or were we given any time frame for us to submit from the committee, or after we submitted the structure where we requested after that we need to provide the presentation? But I think we were supposed to, and I agree with the Honorable Janki and Breitenbach, that we were supposed to have sent the two documents simultaneously. So I don't know whether there was any miscommunication between the Public Protector Office and the committee secretariat. CEO, do you have any explanation to that, or Ms. Mamabolo?
Thank you, PP. The submission which we first made was to the Speaker of the National Assembly, which we did 3 weeks or so ago. I'll have to verify the actual date, PP and Chairperson. And post that, we then received a letter, I think late last week, from the Speaker's office indicating that our submission has been made to the Portfolio Committee. Then on, I think on Tuesday, on the holiday, we received then the communication inviting us to today's sitting, and the deadline for the submission was yesterday, PP and Chairperson. Although we acknowledge that it was late at night, we apologize for that delay. We should have submitted by close of business at the latest yesterday, because that was the reasons for the delay. There were several inputs that we received after we had drafted the presentation, which needed to be incorporated on the final version of the presentation. However, the deadline to the portfolio committee for the submission of the presentation itself was yesterday, although we did it after hours. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, may I say something?
Honorable Bredenbach.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I'm not blaming anybody for this. It's clear that it will be very difficult to apportion blame to anybody. But for the Office of the Public Protector to be told on a public holiday that they're appearing today, it's 3 days' notice. It's not sufficient, in fairness. I mean, they don't sit about in their offices waiting to be called to Parliament. I'm sure they have other work to do as well. And then for the deadline to have been, for submission to have been yesterday, close of business, so let's say, generously speaking, 5 o'clock. When precisely were the members supposed to receive it and prepare it? And I'm certainly not blaming the Secretariat if they receive it, even if they received it at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock, it's impossible for them to get it out to us in any kind of decent time for us to prepare. So I know that we're working in difficult times, and I know that conditions are not optimal. But such short time frames are not helpful to anybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Janchi.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Let me welcome the response and explanation from the PP's office. Thank you for that. I had put two issues to say where the problem is. Listening to that presentation, they are saying the first deposit was to the Speaker's office 3 weeks ago. And then there was a response from the Speaker's office a week or so ago to say the matter has been referred to us as the Justice Committee. So the ball is brought back to us, and I want therefore you to assist us with the committee section and secretariat, because we have a standard that we have set, and in February when we did strat plan, we kind of elevated that standard. That's 7 days before any committee meeting we want to have received documents. For the committee section, if it did, to create its own standard of saying
and then the
deadline is the day before.
Or were we given
I don't know who they were doing it for. Because certainly that's not an expectation from us as members. And therefore it's going to be important that we get that clarification. But it's clear if the explanation from the PP's office is not disputed, it means we've got an in-house problem that we need to solve. And maybe to solve it, we might not need it to expose them to our own problems, but the problem seems to be located. I wanted that to be located so that we deal with it. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
After that, we need to provide the presentation, but I think we...
Thank you, Chair. Let us thank the.
We're supposed to, and I agree with the Honorable Jackie and Breitenbach that
the timing of the receipt of the presentation. Yes, we have all of.
We were supposed to have sent the 2 documents,
which in actual effect means one would have seen the document from 8 o'clock.
So I don't know whether there was any miscommunication between the Public Protector Office and the committee secretariat. CEO, do you have any explanation to that, or Ms.
Would not have had an ample time to dissect, analyze, and reflect on the presentation.
The submission which we first made was to the Speaker.
Was it will actually make us ineffective and inefficient. The issue of the organizational structure is a very critical component in the performance of any entity of the public sector. I think it is very important to raise it loudly that we do not accept such kind of a treatment from the Public Protector's Office. Even at the time when we speak of a reasonable deadline, there is what we call a reasonable practice. What has been the practice throughout? It is not the first time the Public Protector
of the National Assembly, which we did 3 weeks or so ago. I'll have to verify the actual date.
Presentation few hours before the actual meeting must not happen again.
Received the communication inviting us to today's sitting, and the deadline for the submission was yesterday. PP and
to ensure that such issues do not repeat themselves. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mono. Honorable Mafuke.
Although
Chair, thank you very much. I think I'm partly covered by my colleagues, but I want to say that as we are not blaming the Public Protector's Office, but also looking at ourselves as Parliament, I think it's very important that we should also check that on holiday, you might find some of them in the Public Protector's Office were not there. If somebody has to communicate on Tuesday, what are we expecting from them? I think we should also be sensitive on that fact and say that now, are you ready? Do you think you are comfortable to can present this? Because for some of us who receive this in the morning, it's so much unfair because we don't have to be looking at the structure just to critique. We should be able to assist them to get things going. That is the main important point. And I think we should look at this issue in a very serious way because really it's very unfair for both Parliament and also that. But I really want to look inside Parliament what happened, that things should be decided on Tuesday. It's very unfair that we look at that. Are they comfortable today? That is my first question. Are they ready?
Thank you very much. Certainly we will have to follow up on this matter, both within Parliament and ensure that we communication to all our stakeholders is done timeously. And also response on their side is also timeously so that members of Parliament can have enough time to exercise their constitutional right to critique and to interrogate what is brought before us. Honorable members, can we proceed? I assume that the Public Protector is ready to present. Can we proceed?
Thank you, Chairperson, and we also take a note of the concerns, and again we apologize for sending the document late, but also we will have to also change how we send documents because the submission to the Speaker was detailed. It means in future also we will have to send the submission, the structure, or any document, but also attach prepare the presentation immediately, because I think that's also very critical so that members of Parliament can prepare themselves on time. So we will improve on that. Thank you. I'll hand over to the acting CEO to go through the presentation, and myself and DPP, we will then add after she has presented.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, PP, and thank you, Chairperson and honorable members. Just a correction, the invite was actually received by us on Monday, not on the holiday with the deadline for yesterday. However, as the PP has indicated, we profusely apologize for the delay. Litabo, if you can take us to the next slide. We'll be looking at the introduction, the structure comparison, the before and the after. The current structure, which is the Model 6, will also be looking at how we are improving our accessibility with the current structure. We'll also be looking at the workload in terms of our investigators' workload average. We will also look at the need to review the current structure, which is the Model 6. We'll also have the high-level picture of the revised structure, the key changes on the revised structure itself, the financial implications, and then also go to conclusions and recommendations. Our current structure was approved in 2017, the one we are referring to as Model 6. It is reviewed in order to address imbalances that we have between the core business and the support function. The support positions were almost equal to the core business. You will see the numbers as we go down further. Furthermore, the shrinking financial resources necessitated a comprehensive review of the structure, as the institution, like all other public sector institutions, is required to achieve more with minimal resources. We then approached the Department of Public Service Administration in order for them to assist, and their organizational development unit was made available in that regard. Next slide. We were able to save costs when we engaged the PPSA because they provided their services at no cost. We started the process in 2018. We had several meetings between ourselves and the PPSA. We also did internal consultations with management as well as our labor unions, which then culminated into the organizational structure, which is currently reviewed. In addition, we also consulted with the Minister of Finance as required by our PP Act, and he also confirmed his support for the reviewed structure. Next slide. In terms of the structure comparison, the current and the revised, we have a total number of 707 positions in the Model 6 and 582 in the revised structure. Posts that are funded are 351 in total. Of those, 262 are within the core business, 180 of which are investigators, 82 are support within the core, your non-investigative staff, such as outreach officers and administration support within core business, and the administration component has 89 positions. And then going back to the table, number of unfunded posts are 356 in the current structure. In the revised structure, there are 231. And the number of positions in the core branches, in total, there are 591 on the current structure. On the revised structure, there are 446. And then within the support, we have 116 positions currently. In the revised structure, there are 136. And the total cost of the Model 6 or the current structure is 426.9 million. And the revised structure will cost us 378.3 million. And we have a difference of 48.5 million in comparison of the current structure and the one that is revised and has been recently tabled. Next slide. This is our current structure where it indicates, if you can just check under the Chief Operations Officer, which is the level below CEO, we have 4 branches currently under the Chief Operations Officer, which is our Administrative Justice and Service Delivery. We have the Good Governance and Integrity. We also have the Complaints and Stakeholder Management, and 1 Executive Manager that is responsible for Provincial Investigation and Integration. Then the CFO's office, as well as the Executive Manager Corporate Services. Next slide, please. As I indicated earlier in the table, out of the 707 posts, only 351 are funded, which is slightly below 50%, and a total of 356 are not funded. Of the 591 position, of the 707, 591 are core, which constitute 84% of the total structure. Out of the 591 positions in core, 351 are investigators and 240 are support function. This is what I was talking to earlier to say the numbers were almost equal between investigators and support within the core business. And Again, the past few years have proven that it's not practical for us to be able to fund the current structure, more so after several engagements with the National Treasury and the financial situation of the country, which we are all aware of. Next slide. We have 9 provincial offices and 8 regional offices that are currently functional. In terms of the current structure, we're supposed to have 21 regional offices. 5 of those have been closed and 8 were never opened. We're currently operating with 8 regional offices. This has affected our accessibility in terms of the services that we provide, which we are currently managing through our outreach programs and roadshows. As I indicated earlier, we have 1 executive manager at head office that is responsible for all head office and all provinces in terms of the current structure, which is the Model 6. Next slide, please. In terms of improving our accessibility under the circumstances, we've entered into MOUs with different institutions, which include CCMA, the Department of Justice, COPTA, South African Post Office, SALGA, regarding office space. All institutions agreed in principle to avail space on condition they have readily available space. However, to date, there has been no commitment as yet, and we have not been able to place any of our staff in their facilities, but negotiations are continuing. Ideally, we're supposed to have at least place our human resources and tools of trade at this MOU partners that we have, and we should be able to allocate budget for that. We have been negotiating for placement of staff currently at least for once a week or bi-weekly, or to be able to put out complaints receiving boxes at their receptions. This is a discussion that is underway, as none of the institutions have so far availed space for us to can occupy permanently. Next slide. In terms of our workload, international best practice have indicated that an average maximum workload to support timely completion of investigation is between 10 to 25 cases per investigator. However, in the PPSA environment, our average caseload per investigator is at the end of March. These are interim figures. We're still in the process of finalizing our annual report. As members may be aware that the annual report deadline for the 2019-20 financial year has been shifted to end of July. So these are interim figures. Which may change. Our current caseload per investigator is 79 cases. This average figure, it's not only the indication of a high workload in terms of our resources. However, the types of complaints are becoming increasingly complex, and also time that we spend on them, which puts a higher demand on the progression of skills and the time that we require to be able to finalize our cases due to their complexity. Next slide. We have reviewed and streamlined our complaints handling system to achieve efficiencies at each stage of the investigation process. We are strengthening our proactive engagement with particular sectors to identify trends and systemic issues. We are also concerned that without sufficient resources to manage this high level of complaints, the office will not be able to consider such complaints appropriately and within time, and be able to carry out investigations and achieve resolutions within appropriate timeframes to meet the expectations of the public as well as the Parliament. Next slide. The need to review the structure. What necessitated the need to review the structure was firstly, the current structure in terms of our administrative and justice and service delivery branch. We had more investigators at the senior level than investigators. Therefore, the senior investigators currently do not have any supervisory role. The revised structure also sought to correct this in order to capacitate senior investigators, but also in response to the strategic move by government generally to reduce the COE expenditure. The quality assurance as well unit has one position currently in the structure that we have, and the unit is key for the quality of the investigation reports that we are issuing. issuing regularly. Next slide. Another reason for the review is that at the provincial level, there's no effective admin support. Therefore, as a result, majority of the admin support functions are centralized at head office. We needed to correct this to ensure that there's effective support at a provincial and regional office level. The current structure has 200 admin support positions within a core business, as indicated earlier. And again, we did not have entry-level posts at a level of a clerk within finance and supply chain, which also affects segregation of duties. The internal audit has only 4 positions, which is not sufficient for effective audits that are required within the organization. Our risk management unit has 3 positions, although currently only 1 is filled. We also don't have an employee wellness unit. We only have 1 official that is responsible for the function at the moment. Next slide. This is the revised structure at a high level. The change that I would request members to take note of is under the Chief Operations Officer, which is the investigation branch or our core business. We now have 2 executive managers that are responsible for provincial investigation and integration. We've clustered them into coastal and inland provinces. We still have the complaints and stakeholder management branch, and then the administrative justice as well as the good governance, they've been meshed to be one a branch called investigations. Next slide. The number of posts in the revised structure has been reduced by 125, as indicated earlier. We're now sitting at 500 positions. Most of these positions are admin support and assistant investigators, 49 assistant investigators from both head office and provinces, 60 admin assistants from the head office investigation branches and head of and province as well. The remaining 16 out of the 125 are from the corporate services branch. Next slide. Assistant investigators are being removed because they do not handle investigations independently, and therefore they don't make much impact in terms of the reduction of the workload. So we'd rather have senior investigators and investigators, because investigators are able to handle investigations independently with the supervision of senior investigators. We also need more investigators, hence the assistant investigators are replaced by investigators which are more senior in terms of level. Appointment of more investigators will assist in reducing our caseload, which currently is a challenge within PPSA. I've already spoken about the provincial investigation and integration that has been clustered into 2 or divided into 2 clusters. Each one led by an EM, as well as the merge of GGI and AJSD. We're able, with the merging of the 2 branches, we're able to have 1 EM or executive manager moving to become responsible for the other provincial investigation and integration without having to pay or incur costs in that regard. Next slide. In terms of the anomaly in the AJSD, we've corrected it in the structure where now the senior investigators are having investigators under them. Most complaints in AJSD, they can be dealt by investigators because they are not complex, hence the need of more investigators than senior investigators. And then the number of senior investigators at AJSD has reduced from 17 to 6, while the number of investigators has increased from 8 to 18. And I must emphasize that this is not in the actual sense, but it's just on the structure, not in terms of filling of those positions. The stakeholder management unit, we have created a position in the revised structure where the unit will be headed by a manager. This will ensure that we strengthen cooperation between ourselves and our stakeholders. Managers' positions were also created in provinces to ensure that there's effective administration support to the provincial heads and relieve them from some of the administrative work. More positions were also added to the quality assurance unit to ensure that we strengthen the function of the quality assurance of our investigations. facilities and logistics management, as well as knowledge management and information, were merged, where we had to then eliminate one senior manager position between the two units. Next slide. We added positions to legal services, internal audit, risk management, and employee wellness to ensure that they become effective. The legal services unit is expanded to build capacity internally so that we can limit using of external law firms. This will go a long way to reduce the cost that we're incurring in terms of external services around legal services. Internal audit also plays a critical role in ensuring that PPSA has necessary controls to improve effectiveness and efficiency, hence the need to add more positions in this unit. And I believe members will recall that in the past our internal audit had been outsourced. So with the insourcing, we need more warm bodies within so that we can be able to be effective in the audits that we are carrying out. We also created entry-level positions within finance and supply chain to ensure that there is segregation of duties in enhancing our controls. The compliance unit, we had been placed under the CO's office. Now it has been placed in the COO's office in terms of the structure. Our internal relations and parliamentary liaison unit, we moved it from complaints and stakeholder management branch. It is now reporting under the or at the private office. In terms of the financial implications, we already indicated that 351 positions are funded, and they currently cost us 266 million, which is 78% of our total budget. Out of the 231 unfunded posts in the revised structure, 115 are investigations, of which 3 of those are chief investigators, 33 are senior investigators, 79 are investigators. We will need 79.2 million to be able to fund the posts under the investigation branch, which is 115 in total. And to be able to fund the rest of the position in support, we will need 44.3 million. The total funding that we require to fill all the 231 unfunded positions in the revised structure is 123.6 million. As PPSA, we have been in support of the drive by government to reduce costs and also to be efficient. Hence, we made use of the DPSA in the revision of our structure. The cost of the revised structure is 48 million less compared to the current one. This will also assist in the reduction of the CO bill by public sector. And then the next slide, please. Our recommendation to the committee is to note the reviewed structure or the revised structure, note also the funding requirements that we have, and also requesting the members that they support the approval of the structure. That is all. Thank you, Chairperson and members, for your time.
Thank you very much, Public Protector. Do you want to say something before I hand over to members and Deputy Public Protector?
Thank you, Chairperson. I don't have any comment. I think we will take questions unless DPP has some additions to make.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members and PP. I have no additional comments. We shall await any questions.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, any question, comments?
My hand is up, Chair.
Honorable Mufuke. Honorable Horn. Let's start with Honorable Mufuke.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thanks for the presentation. Chair, I just want to find out, I think, only on about 2 or 3 things. One, it will be on the issues of how will the organizational structure improve on this, whatever is coming now, the strategy, because I'm worried. I was listening that they have a lot of investigators, but I don't, even when I check the structure, I realize that they don't have anything showing on the investigators. And my worry was starting with the office of the PP. It's strategic, it's very important, and the deputy public protector. But I don't see the researchers. What I noticed is that in one of their adverts, they had an investigating officer. They're looking for one with an experience also on research. But I'm thinking that it's very important to have that so that they can be able to do their work, not to be having investigators doing a lot onto that. Maybe for them to can clarify us on that so that they can be efficient. The other one, it will be on who developed the new organizational structure. Was there any consultation with either the Department of Public Administration or National Treasury? Because I know that the GTAC has assisted in the Office of the Chief Justice, and they are now assisting the Department of Justice itself so that they can be aligned to the strategy. I want to check on that if it's happening. And then on one of the slides, I think it's slide 9, on improving the PPSA accessibility. I noticed that there were MOUs that were supposed to be entered, and they failed or never happened. Did they have the time frames onto when should they be signed so that they can be able to do their work? And on the issue of did the institution get staff inputs from the staff or from the union so that they can be able to move together? And lastly, it will be on the 4th Industrial Revolution. How ready are they? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Hon.
Thank you, Chairperson. My first question is on the organogram itself, and it relates specifically to the manner in which the Deputy Public Protector has been placed on the organogram, which on a strict reading of how organograms work would entail that there is a line of authority and accountability between the Public Protector and the Deputy Public Protector, but that there ultimately is no line of authority or responsibility of the Deputy Public Protector in respect of the rest of the institution. So I don't know, whether the way the organogram has been set up is a true reflection of the factual position, but if that is the case, then the question must be asked whether that is a proper and sound situation or position to put the Deputy Public Protector in terms of organizational structure and orientation. Then, Chair, secondly, it is stated that DPSA assisted in the whole exercise of review and settling on the new organogram. I would like to ask what form of assistance was given in this regard, and to what extent the ultimate organizational structure is the product of DPSA energy and work, whether DPSA, not that that it was required, was in agreement with the final structure. Did the involvement and the assistance of DPSA go that far, or was it just consultations and a brief orientation and a bit of transfer of knowledge as to how to go about the whole review process? And then, Chair, Section 311A of the Public Protector Act also requires that there must be tabled within 14 days after such a determination was made by the Public Protector, a detailed document of the remuneration allowances and other conditions of employment of the personnel of the Public Protector. And as a matter of fact, the Act also says that ultimately the National Assembly must approve or disapprove that. Now, we know that apparently there was a more detailed document sent to the Speaker, could we be advised as to whether there was complied with this section, and maybe apart from the public protector, you or the committee secretary could also advise as to whether that, if that was done, this is part of our referral and that is still to come in terms of our engagement with the whole issue. And if it has not been complied with, when can we expect that? Because obviously for us to pronounce on it, we must look at the whole of the legislative requirements. Then thirdly, Chair, in respect of the advice of the Minister of Finance in May, when he said he has no objection to the new organogram, it is important to note that the way I understand his response, he said, and importantly so, he had no objection on the condition that it was to be implemented within the allocated baselines. But yet, if we look at point 9 on the presentation, it would seem that, and it's obviously within their right, there is a advocacy from the part of the Public Protector's Office that what is urgently needed now is for additional positions to be funded. So this seems to be a bit of a contradiction, and we must, I think, also properly understand how the consultations with the Minister of Finance went, because I don't know whether it will be within our authority even to advocate the Treasury to increase funding if the Minister said, but I give my approval, or I will not object to your new organogram on the condition that you work within the currently allocated baselines. In addition to that, if the Public Protector in any event could advise us as to whether there was engagements in the run-up to the drafting of the disaster-induced adjustment budget, which will be tabled next week, and whether there was cuts to the baseline for all practical purposes. And then lastly, Chair, in respect of also the organogram and the vision to set up a legal unit, I mean, obviously a properly capacitated legal unit will add and should add value to the Public Protector's Office. The only issue I have is with the statement that could hugely work towards a saving in litigation costs, which is, I think, if one looks at how litigation works, obviously not the case. A legal unit could probably assist with protecting the Office of the Public Protector to the proliferation of reviews, judicial reviews we have seen over the last years, and also in addition to that, assist with some in-house legal opinions as to whether specific reviews has to be defended or not. But in respect of the real costs of litigation, there's simply no way any firm of attorneys or advocate will be satisfied to work on documents that were drafted in-house. So I'm just saying that I think we should not be blinded by the fact that the litigation costs probably will not be cut hugely if a legal unit is set up and capacitated. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Dennis Breitenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm covered by the Honourable Mofokeng and the Honourable Horn. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honourable Richard Janji.
Thank you very much, Chair. Let me also add my voice and welcome the presentation by the PPSA team. Thank you very much for the presentation. Just a couple of questions, Chair, and I also want to make some few determinations for the for the PP to respond to. Maybe the first one, just at a general level, PP, as you come to us and present this in the committee, can put your pen down and everything else, just to share with us what is the big opportunity that this will bring, the kind of new normal that this will bring to the Office of the Public Protector South Africa. And that response should be responding to a layman kind of a person who is not into these intricacies. Because I'm looking for that, especially if you take into account that a similar exercise was done in 2017, and 2 years, 3 years later, we are also again dealing with this. I'm interested in that. Secondly, because I'm actually asking the question for you to demonstrate and just show us that if the committee support and agree to this, this is what it will do to the kind of work that we do. I'll come to the details later. But also, if you can help us link, you've just come in front of us as part of the strat plan and the annual performance plan. If you can link what you're bringing to us to what you have just completed with yourself, the strat plan of your office as to whether the exercise that we're busy dealing with now, what value that brings. The third point I want to raise, Chair, and want to put to the Public Protector to motivate for me why I want to submit Public Protector that you don't need the Chief Operating Officer. And I was hoping that in this restructuring reorganization, you would present utilizing those funds and that position for something else. You don't need that position. This is now my assertion and determination. And I would want you to really motivate why you think you should keep the Chief Operating Officer in addition to your CEO and so on, because you can draw in a lot out of those resources. I like the scenario drawn because for me, hopefully you'll respond to that. The Public Protector, when you speak about it, what comes out first is investigations. If you speak about the Auditor General, what comes first is audit. Okay, so the key thing that drives this office is investigations. So I like this thing, the scenario you've painted of 10 to 25 case per investigator, as opposed to your current 79 to 1 investigator with 79 cases. Then what you're presenting to us, you did not conclude and demonstrate to us with what you are presenting. What does it say about the ratio of 1 investigator to what? I have missed that part, because I'm looking at whether you're coming any close to what you have painted in front of us, or are we just ticking the box here? Because I want the question to be addressed. What is this new structure going to address? I think that for me has to be responded to. Also, what I am looking for is, are you here building capability? Because you've painted a very good picture that shows reductions of about 125, meaning that you're beginning to say the issue is not how big this institution is. The issue is its capability. And if this is what we are putting forward, the issue of capability, I have missed an explanation about what kind of skills, this set of skills that you want the new structure to kind of deal with. I mean, Honorable Jacob Mufokeng raised one of those, the research. In our past interactions with you complained, correctly so, about certain critical skills that you don't have in this office that would have pushed you to go and source out and spend a lot of money on consultants, because as your work evolved, those skills were kind of coming up. Now, this is besides the issue of investigators, which is a very important skill in this office. I am interested in that if your proposal, this proposition, which I would support, is building capability as opposed to a big amoeba of a structure that is all over the place. I would support, but I am missing to see how that capability will be achieved, because we are not given a set of skills that you want to draw into this. The next point, Chair, is you have listed 3 levels, which are like your chief investigator, the other one is senior investigator, and the investigator. Perhaps just to indicate to us what levels are we talking about? So for the chief investigator, are we talking about a DDG level, the senior investigator? So I think it's important just for us to see that. I'm in support of the movement towards eating the fat at the top and begin to spread that in the entirety of the organization. But I think there are certain areas that from where I'm sitting, I find them a bit missing. My last question, Chair, has been addressed by Honorable Horn about whether you'll be doing this within the same baseline and this year, the multi-year kind of priority of post. If you're not able to do that, because that would have been your agreement with the finance treasury, are you therefore making a new proposition to us that says you want to go beyond this because of these kind of pressing matters? I pause there, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Levoet Dragens.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon to everybody. Thank you to the Public Protector and your team for the presentation. My questions are as follows. Firstly, the reduction in staff by 125 positions. I'm curious as to how did you come up to the 125? How did you decide, to get to the number of 125? And then I see in 8.2, the target of 125, reduction by 125, is from administrative support and assistant investigators. But in each province, you will be appointing senior admin officers. So I'm curious to know, what is the difference in terms of the job descriptions? The role of what the job descriptions of that you are reducing provinces. What is the difference there? And then in point 4.3, you say that there's no wellness program. So now with coronavirus and the pandemic and it's spreading in the country, what is the impact on your office and the provincial office? Is, the impact of not having a wellness program. And in the new structure, the new organogram, efficiency. So the efficiency of the office, how will the new organogram result in improved efficiency in your office? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. PP.
Chair.
Honorable Ngola.
I don't know what might be the problem. I do have a raise your hand button. I've been raising it, but there seems to be a bit of a problem. Nevertheless, it's fine, Chair. Let me also welcome the presentation made by the Public Protector South Africa with regard to the organizational structure of the office. A very important office to enhance and safeguard the democracy of South Africa. Indeed, Chair, the organizational structure, critical component in advancing and executing the mandate of each and every entity. But what I would perhaps want to check first is the impact of this revised structure into the operation.
Sorry, Honorable. Can you all mute your mics? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would like to check the impact of these changes into the operations of the office in executing the mandate of the office. In particular, when we look at the fact that investigations are part of the core mandate of the office. And we note in the report that there are a huge number of unfunded investigation posts for investigators, a huge number of them. So that may have impacted into the rise on the workload, which is 279 cases. But what is the impact to the execution of the mandate of the office with regard to this report? Because we must equally safeguard, as much as it is necessary to reduce our structure and align it with the available resources, but equally we must